Mr. Speaker, the Intelligence and Security Committee of Parliament, of which I'm the chair, has been investigating the threat posed to this country by Russia. We've produced a report which, in accordance with the Justice and Security Act, we sent to the Prime Minister on the 17th of October for him to confirm that there were no classified matters remaining, and there ought not to be, because it's already been very carefully looked at by the Cabinet Office. That confirmation should have been received by today to thus enable publication before the House is dissolved. But I regret to say it has not. Mr. Speaker, we thus have a Committee of Parliament waiting to lay a report before this House which comments directly on what has been seen as a perceived threat to our democratic processes. Parliament and the public ought to have and must have access to this report in light of the forthcoming election, and it's really unacceptable for the Prime Minister to sit on it and deny them that information.
Then Prime Minister Boris Johnson sat on the Russia report, a parliamentary report on allegations of Russian interference in British politics, despite intelligence agencies actively supporting the report's release ahead of the 2019 general election. While sitting on the report and during the election campaign, Johnson said this.
When will you release the Russian report? This is the report into whether or not there was Russian interference or any kind of...
There is absolutely no evidence that I know. If that's the case, then why not release it? To show any interference in any British electoral event.
A claim he repeated many times during the campaign as he dodged questions on the report.
There's absolutely no evidence that I've ever seen of any Russian interference in UK democratic processes.
It was another 10 months before the report was finally published in July 2020. Its conclusions were damning. In presenting its findings, the committee began with this.
Under the Justice and Security Act, the committee must send its report to the Prime Minister for confirmation that they can be published. As has been widely reported, the Prime Minister failed to provide his confirmation that this report could be published within the standard 10 working days. And as a result, the House rose for the general election before the report could be published. There was no reason for this delay. Number 10 have said that there are only 6 days in which to look at this report. That is not true. The Prime Minister has also said, the office has also said, that it usually takes 6 weeks to actually get this confirmation. Can I also say that's categorically not true? The number 10 has also reported that it also had to go back around government for comment. Again, this is not true. It had already been through the processes. The final point is said that the proper processes hadn't been followed in the consideration of this report. Can I also say that categorically is not true? Everyone who needed to see the report in government had done so. It was now waiting for the Prime Minister to agree the report, which was sent to him on the 17th of October.
And then came this.
What we do know about Russian influence in the UK is that it's the new normal. Successive governments have welcomed Russian oligarchs and their money with open arms. And there is a lot of Russians with very close links to Putin who are now very well integrated into both UK business, political and social scene in what has been referred to as Londongrad.
But the committee's most shocking conclusion was still to come.
There has, however, been speculation that this report was going to reveal either that Russia had interfered in or sought to influence the referendum. In the committee's view, it's worse than that. The report reveals that no one in government knew if Russia interfered in or sought to influence the referendum because they did not want to know. The UK government have actively avoided looking for evidence that Russia interfered. We were told that they hadn't seen any evidence, but that is meaningless if they hadn't looked for it. The committee found it astonishing that no one in government had sought beforehand to protect the referendum from such attempts or investigated afterwards what attempts to influence it there may have been.
Remember, while sitting on the report during the 2019 general election campaign, Johnson had repeatedly said this.
There's absolutely no evidence that I've ever seen of any Russian interference in UK democratic processes.
Which is not surprising given the committee's findings that
the UK government have actively avoided looking for evidence that Russia interfered.
The committee didn't hold back.
The evidence which the government provided said they had not seen any successful interference in the UK democratic process or any activities that has led to impact on elections, for example, influence results. However, the scandal is the reason for that is because no one had actually sought that, and there was no investigation. So they can make that statement without any, but no attempt was made to look at it. So it's a pretty hollow statement.
Following the report's publication, Johnson actually had the front to tell Parliament this.
After all, if he thought there was genuinely something in the ISC report that showed that, for instance, the Brexit referendum had been undermined by Russia, then he would now be saying it, but that doesn't appear.
And members of the government told UK news studios proclaiming this.
The report, as you rightly say, didn't find any evidence of interference in, for example, the EU referendum, but it's not that our intelligence agencies are not looking for interference.
It was, of course, complete bollocks.
The UK government have actively avoided looking for evidence that Russia interfered. We were told that they hadn't seen any evidence, but that is meaningless if they hadn't looked for it.
And sit down for this next bit.
You mentioned the suggestion that the UK had actively avoided investigating Russia. I think in fairness you'll find that wasn't in the ISC report, it was the comment of one MP, Stuart Hosey, and we categorically reject that.
Well, actually it did. The written evidence provided to us appeared to suggest that Her Majesty's government had not seen or sought evidence of successful interference in UK democratic processes or any activity that has had a material impact on an election, for example, influencing results. In response to this potentially compromising lack of electoral and national security, a group of parliamentarians has taken the UK government to the European Court of Human Rights, claiming the government is infringing our right to free and fair elections by failing to act on the findings of the Russia report.
We do need to leave the European Convention on Human Rights.
The court in Strasbourg has now indicated the case both has merit and may be designated an impact case. It's written to the government inviting it to respond in detail to the allegations by April 26th.